welcome to Last Week On. My name is Adam Straughan, and we are back with Invincible. Season 3 has just dropped, the first 3 episodes, in fact, which is insane, but I love it. But here today, we are talking about episode 1, You're Not Laughing Now. But before we get into that, I have a very special guest. He is the host of Slayerfest 98 and the co-host of My Bloody Judy. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome the legend, the one and only Ian Carlos Crawford. How are you doing, Ian?
Oh, shucks, Adam. Keep going. I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. It's so good to have this show back, Ian. Like, genuinely so good. Because, like, for me, and Robert Kirkman spoke recently a little bit about, like, superhero fatigue. And in an interview he was talking about it, and he was like, I get it to a degree, but when it's, like, more comic focused like this show, he was like, I don't feel like it is. Plus, I mean, the length of time that we've had between Invincible, like, is insane.
Yeah, I feel like there's, like, sure, there is some superhero fatigue, but there's not, like, Invincible fatigue, because it's,
Yeah.
like, we haven't even had that much of it. And I don't know. I'm still like, what do you feel about that in general? Because, like, I understand that, like, even you and I that are, like, big nerds, right? It's like, sure, there's not, like, an urgency to have to see every movie now, but I don't know. I feel like it's just a genre the way, like, action movies are a genre. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what you're going into. Like, and
Yeah.
even before like superhero like movies are like what they are now, like even when the X-Men movies were out, you know, like if you're into that stuff, you go and see it,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, you know, like it, as you said, it's a genre. Like, who's saying, oh, we've got horror movie fatigue? Like, it's
Right.
still going
Yeah.
on. It's like, it just depends. Like, obviously there's different movies within that do really well or suck, but that's a genre. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, as long as it's done well, it's telling an interesting story, they're doing interesting stuff with character stuff, then I'm there for the ride. You know what I mean? And that's, I feel like all of that we get with Invincible. It's not just, we've said this so many times. Obviously, Ian's been on the show before. And one of the big things we've always like hammered home about this show is that it could have been the Spider-Man ripoff, right? And there's a lot of
Yeah.
like similar elements with that, but it's so not. Like, it does such its own interesting thing with the genre, and that's why I really like it, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah. And I was thinking that a lot watching this premiere,
Mm.
like about like the comic bookiness of it.
Yeah, yeah. And although that doesn't hold back as well, like some of the stuff, like, you know, it just, you just go with it because it's like very comic booky, like, and it's a bit nuts, but you're like, you know what? We're here for the ride. This is a comic books. This is what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I feel that with this. But before we get into it, Ian, very quickly, obviously, if you think back, I sent Ian like a recap of season 1 and season 2 just before this. It's like a Screen Crush video who do amazing recaps, by the way. Always with Ryan Airy, by the way. Shout out to Ryan Airy, who is a legend. But me and my husband, we always watch, like, anytime we watch a show, we're watching Severance right now, and we're like, I wonder if Ryan Airy's done a video on this. And yeah, he did a great video. It's like 13 minutes long. But did you watch it, Ian?
Yeah, I did. Because I was like, wait, what's the sock puppet? When we got to the sock puppet first.
Right.
I thought it was an ad, and then I realized it was not an ad.
Right. It's just one of the characters, like his dog, as well as another character randomly. But yeah, God, you needed it. And like when you watch that, you're like, how much has actually happened? And we're only 3 seasons in.
Adam, it's funny because I was like, when I started the season 3 premiere, I was like, oh, I'm on the wrong season. That's last season. And I was like, oh, no, this is the right season. It's only season 3. Because it really does feel like this should be like 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, it feels like, because there's been that much content, and like we're talking like 10 episodes a season as well, like how much they've crammed in. But still, I don't feel like I don't feel like, you know, I'm overwhelmed by it. I'm just along for the ride. As I say, the world's still building out, but like we're still going forwards with the characters that we know and love. And I think it does that really well. It makes that balance really well, you know?
Yeah, I will say this episode was a little crowded where I was having just didn't make me dislike it. I just was having a little trouble keeping track of like, wait, did I miss something? No, we're just like moving along.
Yeah, there's a particular scene like later on, which we'll get to, where there's like certain new heroes come in and you're like, who the hell is that? But okay.
I have a note that says, ask Adam about this.
Yeah, right. And some of them aren't even explained. Like, yes, they're in the comic if you read them. So it's kind of like a wink and a nudge towards that. But yeah, they're just not explained. They're just there, which is interesting. But we'll get to that when we talk about it. But let's jump into it, Ian, because I am super excited. As an opening episode, I really love this. I really genuinely love this. This is top tier for me. But yeah, let's get into it. Okay. So the episode starts where I love this, by the way. So battling like a giant. It looks like a giant cyclops. It's actually called the Giant. And like I love that, during the fight, it looks like a normal setup of a fight. And like this reminds me of Buffy, like when, there'll be a big fight happening, then suddenly it'll stop and it's just a very human moment happens between like the supposed enemy and like Buffy when it's just like, hey, are you okay? Like just
Yeah,
a
yeah.
random little question like that, right? And it's all set up by Cecil. We find out it's like a big part of like this training montage that Mark's going through. But I love that, like, as Mark's like beating up basically this giant, like it pans out and Cecil's there with Donald and talking to the parents of this giant, like, oh yeah, he's only 8 years old. And like Donald's like, yeah, we're still looking for your cure for your son. It's like, it's so slapstick and dumb, but I love it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like but it's on purpose silly and dumb. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And you just kind of, you go with it. Like, that's one good thing about Invincible I really love is that they find the balance with the humor as well as like the dramatic moments and everything like that. Like, when they went to Comic-Con in the last season, like how funny that was because it was just so dumb. Like the covering of the mouth while talking about animation, like it was so on the nose, but you know what I mean? It was so well done.
Yeah.
And this type of thing, do you know what I mean? It reminds me of Buffy. Like Buffy always did that really well where like there's a serious fight happening, then suddenly it's like, can we just break character for a second? Like, hey, how you doing? It just completely changed the feeling of the scene.
The like what's coming to mind is Conversations with Dead People when it's
Yes.
like they recognize each other and like he's like, wait, Buffy Summers, we went to high school together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's honestly it's handled really, really well. So as I said, like this is part of like a montage that we're seeing here. So obviously Cecil is putting Mark through his paces. So we see him like, he's doing like a speed test when he's like out in space and he's like speeding back down to Earth. And like he said, oh, this is like your fastest time yet. And he's putting him through strength exercises. He's like lifting an iceberg at one point. And then, Cecil says that line, which we get the incredible new title card as well. It's like, when we're through with him, he'll finally live up to the name and then, boom, Invincible with the new colors, Ian. What did you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I noticed the new colors. I did not. Because I was like, yeah, no, I did not. I bet you saying that, I'm like, you're right, it was, but I didn't realize.
But I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do, like going forward, obviously, in the other episodes. Because obviously, season one, we had like the blood splatter. Season two, we had like the black wall that kept cracking. And the very last episode, it like finally revealed the name fully. But this season, it's like a very clean title card. So I'm intrigued to see like going forward, like what we're going to get,
Yeah.
But yeah. And then, yeah, what did you think of this opening, Ian?
I liked it. I like the part when I think it's one of the guys is like, he just lifted the heaviest thing we could find. Like, and what is it? They say it's like 300% his strength has gone up.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. So the question I had for you was that like a plot point that we knew that was how? I don't remember that. Like that we knew it was.
No. So it's like,
okay.
it's basically new. It's like new information for the season. But yeah, so it's like 90 days. Basically, Cecil's been like testing Mark and training Mark. And as you said, like all of his stats have gone up when he's reeling him off. He's like, he's 300% stronger now. He's like this amount of percentage faster and like all of this. So Mark is like, he's really doing that thing that, was the big resisting points that Debbie didn't want to happen, which was like turning Mark essentially into like a one-man army into a weapon. But, this is like, after everything that happened in season two, sorry, with like, Anessa coming down and like the other Viltrumites coming down, it's like, we basically don't have a choice. I'm really sorry. Like, Mark's the best bet we've got. We got to protect the Earth somehow.
Yeah. I mean, like, because their heroes are a little bit more realistic, right? Even though it's still like a monster, a robot, and whatever, they still like get their asses beat. So it's like, we kind of do need him, especially after that last season.
Right, with everything with Rex, and then like, we saw heroes die, some of them didn't die, but like, like there was they could have stayed dead essentially. And speaking of Rex, so I love like this when, Mark's in there, he's like literally like weightlifting like a machine, like at one point, like chatting, like it's like bench pressing this gigantic like hydraulic press.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
And just like Cecil and like Donald just chatting in the background. But I love Rex in this episode. He just made me laugh so much.
Adam, I was thinking, I think you and I last season were talking about how we didn't expect to love Rex so much. And I was like, well, they're being consistent because I started loving him. And then this episode, I thought he was like, I just really loved him in this episode.
Yeah. Like for me, like, and I think I said this in the last season as well, like Rex for me started off as like, they really hammed up that generic arsehole character, like alpha male, just, like cheating on his girlfriend, like all of this. But then Rex has one of the best arcs in the comic. Like for me, like I really love the character now. And when I first started the show and obviously first started reading the comics, I was like, he's just 101 arsehole. Like that's the way he's
Yeah, yeah.
written. But then this episode and like everything, even like last season when it looked like he was going to die, I was like, fuck no, like we can't lose Rex. Like, he's really got his claws in me now. But I love this when he's walking in, he's complaining about, you put all this money into training Mark and all of this, and yet we can't get a decent coffee maker. And then my hand doesn't work properly. He's like, look at me now, I'm trying to flip you off, and like
Yeah.
nothing's happening.
I did really like that. That was his example of how it doesn't work. Like, I can't even give you the finger.
It's so good. And even like Mark's like, yeah, like he literally can't do anything. Like I love this friendship that him and Mark are starting to build.
Yeah.
In a way that like they're not trying to like it's not like a I don't know toxic masculine type like relationship. It's just them two like vibing together, and yet they
Yeah.
just get on. Like I really like that with them too.
Well, it's almost
um
like because Rex is supposed to be around his age, right?
yeah,
Mark's
yeah,
age.
yeah. Mhm.
Well, it's like I feel like it's almost like they, and I mean, I guess they still are teens, but like they're maturing into like adults, so they're both kind of like
Mhm.
chilling out with each other more and like I feel like if you're working together so closely, it's like either something has to crack there with like hating each other, right? It like won't work that well if you're always hating each other. So like
Yeah.
I feel like it's almost like they're just kind of like maturing and being like, yeah, whatever. Cause like even later when he's like, just ask Eve out, and Mark's like surprised that Rex isn't like shittier about it.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely that, but also like Rex like balances him out, I think, a little bit because like Mark is feeling the weight of like everything on his shoulders right now.
Yeah.
So it's nice just to have Rex, someone who comes along is just like, fuck it. Like, someone more chill compared to Caesar who's like, Mark, you must do this and you
Yeah.
must be
Yeah.
ready for it. You know what I mean? So it must be nice just to have that guy who's like, it'll be fine, even though he
Yeah.
literally like nearly died in the last season, you
Yeah.
know?
In almost
Um,
every episode.
right, literally, yeah. I mean, even this episode. Um, Obviously, we see a very quick flash of Doc Seismic as well. He's still locked up. He's kind of sitting there. Looks like he's meditating in his locked up cell.
He
And then
is he from the Eve episode?
he was from like season one. Like Dr. Seismic's always been in each season.
Oh shit, I don't remember.
Yeah, he's always been like a minor character though. So like
Around.
like his abilities are like tenfold in this episode. But yeah, he was in like the previous couple of seasons as well. But Mark and Eve have always like managed to take him out. And then
Okay.
obviously, him kind of being in his cell and meditating, he's like really built up his powers this time and communed with the creatures of the earth and all of
Right.
that,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
obviously we'll get to. But yeah, he's like a reoccurring character. But yeah, then we find out that someone is stealing what, Ian? What are they stealing?
The Declaration of Independence.
This is literally the movie National Treasure. Like, where is Nicolas Cage? Like, what are we doing?
I really was waiting for like a Nicolas Cage joke.
Yeah, same. Which would have felt so like apparent in the show. It would have
Yeah.
worked. But again, like going back to their friendship, I love that like straight away Cecil's right, okay, like, Mark, like get yourself away, go and sort this out. And he's like, well, can I take Rex? Because
Yeah.
Rex is like, hello, I'm right here. And I like that he does, that he's like, can I take Rex? It'll be easy. It's only the Declaration of Independence. Someone's stealing it. Like, we'll get it back. It'll be fine. He's like, oh, whatever. Take him away.
It really
This
feels
was,
like in this universe that feels so minor of a problem,
I
right?
know.
Like
Right. Compared to Viltrumites coming down, the Declaration, some piece of old paper, like, sure.
right. Like, all right, whatever.
Right. But then this was interesting where like it looked like there was a mole in the GDA when like the guy like turned around like and like whispered into his ring when he was like, oh yeah, they're on their way to Washington. And I was just like, oh, you remember
I didn't
that?
even Adam, because I was like, I don't remember there being a mole, but I do remember that. And I think I just thought it was like that guy's telling everyone at work, like letting them know. Like I foolishly, it's been a long day. That's how I took that. I was like, oh yeah, he's just letting Cecil and everyone on the team know through his ring. But
Right.
you are correct, and I am just
Yeah. But it was interesting just the way it was filmed, like when he was doing it, like and Cecil and Donald were like down on the bottom. So he was just like doing it to his ring off to the side. And I was like, it's a weird sentence doing it to his ring, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, we then get two new villains. So we get Fight Master and Dropkick. So interesting names, whatever. But they're basically stealing the Declaration of Independence. So Mark and Rex arrive. I love this when they're fighting them and they're like no match. And like I love that Mark and Rex and Buffy again does this really well. Like when Faith and Buffy would fight together and they're like just chatting casually while fighting vampires. Like it's exactly the same. Where like they're fighting these guys off, but they're talking about like, oh, how do you feel about Amber? You're okay after that? Do you have feelings for Eve? You should totally ask her out. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know where my head's at. But I love the way this happens, where they're just casually like throwing them around as if they're just like ragdolls because they don't matter. Because Mark is like turned up to 500 right now, and like Rex is pretty decent at fighting anyway, especially other humans.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I also like, what does he say to the? Also, were those twins or did they just
Yeah.
like? Okay,
Mhm.
because you like gave them separate names. It didn't mention twins. I was like, "Ooh, am I just stupid?" And I
No, no,
thought
they
that
are.
they like, no.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
twins. Yeah.
I like when Rex is like, "Okay, but he's pretty strong." Like,
Mm.
sure, go ahead. Which did remind me, yeah, like very Buffy. If like Willow or Xander are like, I mean, she's gonna kick his ass. Like, sure,
Yeah.
whatever. um, yeah, I like them as a little duo. I kind of hope we get
Mhm.
a little bit more of like them going on missions together.
Yeah.
And of
Same.
course,
Like
my gay brain is like, now they should kiss.
I know, right? Like the scene we get later with like William, Rick, and Mark. I'm like, can we have a polyamorous relationship here? Like, let's go.
I
Like,
mean,
let's get the three of them together. But I love this. Like, I love when the show is now building up friendships with the
yeah,
characters. Like, we get Mark and Rex, and then like I love the scene later on when like William and Rick and like Mark are just bowling together. Like, it's just fun. Like some of the best shows, not to reference Buffy all the time, but it does it when we just get to hang out with our characters, like
yeah,
being
yeah,
friends together. Because we don't get a lot of that when like everything becomes bombastic and they're like saving the world and the end of this episode gets nuts. So it's
yeah,
nice to
yeah.
have these quieter moments of when they're just hanging out and just being teenagers, like just hanging out with each other.
No, yeah, and I think as I like, I guess this is superhero fatigue, but I'm definitely like a little bit more interested in those than like the like actiony stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, I
Yeah.
still like the action, but I definitely like appreciate the like quieter. Now that this is quite, they're fighting, but they're like talking and having a friend moment while fight. I don't know. I like that.
Yeah, and I think it's what you said. It's a friend moment. It's like a good character moment, Like we're seeing, of course, we're seeing our characters develop in like that. Mark is becoming a better fighter. So like, obviously that development is there for that, but also just like him understanding friendships and just like figuring out how to have a friendship with Rex, someone that he really didn't like to start with,
Yeah,
and now look
yeah.
where they are now. So that's like good development. It's good character moments that we love. Um, then we get a new enemy who arrives that we haven't seen, in this form called Multi-Paul. And who
All right, good. That
voices
was a
him?
question I had for you, is if we had seen him before.
Right, right, right. Did you see who voices him?
Mm-mm.
Simu Liu.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
my
Yeah.
boyfriend. Oh,
The one and only, the beautiful guy. So yeah, obviously this is Duplicate's brother. And obviously has exactly the same powers as her. So obviously he rocks up and he's
Adam,
obviously
I
got
was mad at him. I was like,
he's such a
I
dick.
yeah, I know this happens especially in like comic book stuff, but I always get so mad. Like, what did he do? They all were like, he was also basically murdered too, and
Mm-hmm.
like, how is that his fault? Like, they're superheroes and villains like got the drop on them. I was like getting really mad, and I hate how much they beat up. Well, he as multiples beats up Rex. I was like, man, they're going like hard
Yeah.
on poor Rex.
They really were. Like, honestly, like beat the shit out of him, really.
And also in my, because I like did my notes like as I was watching, I was
Yeah.
like, am I forgetting wrong? Because I was like, isn't Kate alive? Don't I know she's? But then I
Yeah.
forgot that it's like that was a secret.
Right, of course, because we get that quick scene where it's like the immortal in the cabin and like the buzzer goes off and he's like, Kate, get dressed. Um,
Because I
obviously cut
remember
back
you
to
and I when we talked about it, we're both kind of like, sure, whatever.
hmm.
Like,
Yeah, because like and Kate even says it later on where like the reason why in the last season she had like the zero on her top is because that's the original. She always kept that to one side in case this ever happened where it looked like she died. She always had a backup, which smart.
yeah,
Um, So yeah, as you said, Ian, like we get the big fight. Like Rex is getting absolutely pummeled by Multipole, like literally to the point of where like his face is getting bashed in. He's like bloody as hell. Looks like his nose might be broken. Like he's getting absolutely laced. And I love that. Like now, like when Mark sees these moments, this happened as well. Like in the last season when he saw someone getting beaten down, and he just like flicks it on. It's like nope. He like almost snaps and just goes into rage mode. And like we
yeah.
saw it when he was fighting one of the Viltrumites as well, like when his, him and his dad were fighting him on that off world, on like the bug world. And then I love here when he's like, no, like fuck this, like Rex is getting beaten down, I'm gonna sort this out, and like jumps
Yeah.
in to save his friend, and I love that. That's been a good friend, and like he kicks the shit out of them, like absolutely kicks the shit out of them.
I so by the time we got to the end, I was like, oh, they definitely did that on purpose. But I was like, oh,
Mm.
this is kind of like when Omni-Man was like ripping through. And then by the end, it's like, oh, yeah, that definitely was on purpose that they showed him like
Yep.
that.
Mhm.
But they fucking deserved it because they were
Yep.
trying to like kill Rex for something he didn't do that he was also sad about.
Exactly. And the difference is like Mark's doing this to save his friend, whereas Omni-Man was just ripping through people because hello, he's just a Viltrumite, right? Like
Yeah.
he's there to dominate. Like when when he first killed like the original Guardians of the Globe, like he wasn't doing that to save anyone. He was just doing that to make it easy to dominate the world. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy. But no, I really like it. Again, it's just a great character moment for Mark. Then obviously like all of this is happening, and then the Immortal and Kate arrive. And I think Rex has a point of being rightfully pissed here. Because, like, he mourned the loss of her and, like, he saw her die. He nearly died with her and Shrinking Ray when all of this was going on. And he's like, hold on a second, what the hell, man? Like, whose decision was it to disappear? And, like, he's really pissed. He's like, I nearly died during all of that. And you said nothing? I, like, totally get where Rex is coming from here.
Oh, yeah, I would be so pissed. Are you kidding me?
Like, 100%. Um, But again, yeah, like I don't know. I did like seeing the Immortal and Kate come back though, because it's like two of the OG. So it
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
nice moment for them to come down, like kind of talk it out. But then obviously Mark continues punching Paul, and he wants him to go to prison. Now this is interesting because this is the start of this where Mark keeps putting this on, where he's like, they've done bad, they deserve to go to prison.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is black and white, and it's like he's like, look, because of this, like the other two, like what were they, Master Fighter and Dropkick, they got away, like they stole the Declaration of Independence, like we were distracted, and like he deserves to go to jail for this. And this is an interesting thread which starts with Mark, and especially by the end of the episode when we see here when Cecil and Mark have that conversation, which in my opinion Cecil's in the right, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, so it's the start, it's setting up that kind of storyline with Mark where he's like, no, black and white,
Yeah.
they did something bad, prison. It's like when Buffy crossed over to the Angel episode with Faith, like no, jail. you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
um, all right, then we go to the Grayson household and we see Oliver. He is more grown up now. He's actually talking properly. He's no longer a little baby who's being yeeted across the room. And he's with April. You know who voices April? You?
No.
Callista Flockhart herself, Ally McBeal.
Wait,
Yeah.
really? Man, they really
Yeah.
get famous people for like every role on the show.
I know, literally, like honestly, they've done so well with it. Like even, I mean, Seth Rogen as well. Like all of these big actors. But yeah, like I mean, I love Callista Flockhart, big Ally McBeal fan, like such a big fan of her. So like when I heard that it was her voice in last season, like doing April, then again, I'm like, oh man, bring her back. Like honestly, give me an April spin-off. Um, but yeah, so obviously April is talking to Oliver, just kind of going through like a bit of like a history lesson with him, finds out that his memory is incredibly good. Like he's able just to rattle off anything that he's learned essentially. Debbie arrives, absolute stan Debbie, the absolute one and only. Sandra Oh is an icon. Debbie is an icon. They talk a little bit about Oliver. And just says, "Oh yeah, like he's growing really fast. His memory's really amazing." If you want to find out, I love like when Mark arrives as well, and he says like, "Hi to April, like how's Oliver doing?" He's like, "Oh, I love when he says like, hey, question, how important is the Declaration of Independence?" And she's like, "Oh, ask your brother." But yeah, but it was so good, like seeing just Debbie back, seeing them all together back in the household. Like it just feels like so long that we haven't seen them like together like this, where time's moved on. Like they're getting back on with their lives now. Like whereas season
Yes.
two felt like really heavy with that, where like they were kind of just wandering. Like Debbie like just wandered for so long through the city, feeling lost. Mark felt lost for so long. Obviously at the end of season two, like when he killed Sinclair and like sorry, when he killed the other Angstrom, when he killed Angstrom, and like he felt so lost after that, and it's so nice just to see them back together like this.
Yeah, it because like of course it's understandable last season why she was going through it, but
Mm.
I love Debbie and I want to see her be able to progress. I don't want
Hmm.
her to get stuck. Because yeah, not that that would be unrealistic, because she has every right to be like fully devastated forever by this. But I really like that character, and I want her to be able to like have a life and have a functioning life. You know what I mean? Like she
Hmm.
deserves to be able to move on, right?
Right, exactly. And like in many ways, like Debbie is the backbone of like the show, like like the
Mhm.
backbone of kind of like Mark and like everything he's got going on there, and like Mark's character, a lot of that he owes to Debbie, right? Like for
Yeah.
really
Oh
pushing
yeah.
the human side of Mark, right? Like his development in that way. So yeah, it is just nice to see her like kind of getting back on her feet and just living like a a more chill but happy life.
Yeah.
And we'll see that going forward, how that develops as well, which is really cool. So yeah, so Oliver clearly like really looks up to Mark, and then we get the scene outside where like they're playing catch like in the back garden, and then he's saying like, oh well, when your powers do develop and when you become like a superhero, then obviously we can talk about maybe training you or whatever. And then I love like when he throws the ball high and he's like up, and then Oliver just flies up and catches it. He's like, oh yeah, my superpowers are here.
Like, oh, that happened already. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like yeah about that. And I kind of like it. It's like a nice throwback to like season 1 when Mark first discovered his powers when he worked at like the Burger Mart and he like threw the bag out and it like shot
Yeah.
into the air and he's like, well, guess my powers are here. And it's not like that obvious like superhero moment of like with great power comes great. Like
Right. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just like, oh yeah, here you go, caught the ball. Oh, by the way, my powers are already here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And
thought that was pretty
I
cool.
like their dynamic.
Yeah.
I like that it's like, I don't know. I was worried there might be like a little, because understandably, if there was some animosity where Mark's like,
Hmm.
this fucking kid,
Yeah.
like I would understand because Mark's also still a teenager, but
Right.
I do like their dynamic of like just like being like wholesome brothers together.
And I think it's kind of like a thing as well of like the last season was building on this a little bit where like Debbie was obviously very like protective of Oliver straight away. Like, I mean, at first she was a bit like, what the hell? Like, why have you brought Nolan's like other child to my
My
household?
evil ex-husband's other child,
Literally.
great.
Like, what am I going to do with this? But
Yeah.
um, but then obviously as the season went on, she like started to mother and protect him a lot more. And then
Yeah.
obviously like now like time's moved on and he's just one part of the family now. But yeah, you're right. Like I love the dynamic where Mark's kind of like, well, he's my baby brother. I'm accepting it.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. And Oliver's a really interesting character. Obviously, his kind of stuff goes on. It'll be cool to see how they're going to handle like Oliver's journey, which is really interesting. But yeah, as you said, I like the dynamic. I like the Mark being the older brother, kind of learning from his mistakes of like how Nolan taught him. Mark's obviously going to be try to be a much better teacher with Oliver anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You see
but
like the Debbiness in Mark
yeah,
coming through. Yeah.
that's it. Like the warmth of like, wanting to be a good parent,
Hmm.
which is what Nolan for most of the time lacked.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
And obviously, we cut back to the Guardians HQ. I really love this. Like this little scene, I thought was really nice, considering like how much shit the Guardians have gone through and had, and like the original Guardians were wiped out. And then the Immortal comes back, Kate returns, like they all see her and they're like, "Oh my god, like Kate, I can't believe you're alive." And like they would have a right to be pissed, but obviously they do go over and just hug, so they're just pleased to see their friend again. Obviously, Kate's engaged. She flashes the ring. Shrinking Ray obviously comes back as well, which Rex is over the moon about because he was like, "Oh my god, I saw you die as well. I saw you get like digested by that creature and like blow up, a blood bubble." So that was cool, like just to see them all hanging out again and just be like, "Oh my god, it was
Yeah.
like a family." And I think it's like Samson says, like, "Oh, the family's back and they're unbreakable." And I really liked it. I like seeing them all back together like this and to have a nice moment together because we don't see
Yeah.
that very often.
Yeah. We really don't.
No. But yeah, no, it was cool.
Especially not with other characters. Like
No.
Mark doesn't get them that much either, but especially not with like the other characters.
No, no. Yeah, as you say, like, Mark obviously always has Debbie and they always have great moments together where like Debbie, I mean, she says later on, like, her first responsibility is always her family. So like Mark and Oliver will now always come
Yeah.
first over anything else, and it's just nice to see this where like, they are colleagues, like they were pushed together to become a team by Cecil. But it's nice that they're like, oh, we're more than that now. Like we've been through all this shit together. I see you more as like family rather than just, some work
Yeah.
colleague. So it is nice
Yeah.
that they've developed in that way. Um, Cecil and Donald are going over problems that are happening all around the country. Basically, we just see that there's in the major cities, like all of these things are popping up. And then Cecil then looks at the screen. He's like, oh, hold on a second. Something else is going on here. Oliver's getting his powers, which makes sense. Like Cecil has got his ears to the ground on everything. Like nothing comes onto the earth or happens without Cecil knowing about it. So straight away, he's like, yep, I need to get on this. I need to see about what's happening here straight away. We cut back to the Grayson household. So Mark and Debbie are talking about Oliver getting his powers. She's saying, look, like, I get it. He wants to be a superhero. He wants to take after you, Mark, but he is still really young. Like, he's like basically, well, he is a child, like, and I know he's like growing really fast and like, he's developing really, really quickly and all of this, but he is still a baby. He's still a child. Like, Debbie has every right to be concerned right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, but we didn't we know that Cecil was like had like cameras up in their house? We knew that
Yeah.
already, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah. And obviously that comes into it later on when like Cecil talks to Debbie about Oliver. Um, Now this next scene, Ian, this is what I love. So we've got William, we've got Rick, and we've got Mark, and they're bowling together. I like as well that like, Mark clearly isn't just using his powers and like just throwing the ball like down there and just knocking up. I like that they're just hanging out and just being friends. Like this is the shit that I love, right? Like the three of them coming together, like, Rick and William being very cute with each other, and then like Mark's like being, I was obviously William's best friend, and they're just talking about like Mark, and he's just like, oh, talking about the other Eve from like the multiverse, the futuristic Eve who said,
I have a question
yeah,
about that, Adam.
yeah.
Because they're like, no, don't mention it. That's just, she's just in her other reality, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, but I feel like that's fine if he mentions her, because like, it's not like, oh, well, now I have to pick between E. It's like, yeah, that's the E from the other reality. I was like a little bit like, I felt like there was something I was missing, but okay. That was
Mm-hmm.
my question for you. And
But no,
also,
yeah.
was Rick, did we see Rick last season? I feel like I don't remember seeing him. I just remember him being mentioned. Like, I remember his
Yes.
character because I remember his episode.
Oh my God, Ian, you got
God.
grandma brain. But so in season two, so all right, so you remember Rick though when he was like he was dating William to start with in
Yeah,
season
yeah,
one, and then we had like D.A. Sinclair who like kidnapped all of like the
yeah.
jockey looking guys and made them into like robots essentially. In season two, so Rick was like recovered and he got out of feeling like that, like the mind control and everything. Now he's still obviously got all this like metal inside him. He was essentially like a Terminator.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but there was that episode, that great episode in season two, and do you remember he was on the roof and he was like looking at like throwing himself off like the roof, and then William was trying
Oh,
to talk
right,
him
right,
down,
right.
and Donald came over and Donald was like, "Look, I'm basically the same, and it's not this that makes us human; it's our memories and everything like that." It's like my favorite season of season two, Ian. Thank you for not remembering that.
Once you said it, I remembered. I have, listen.
Listen, he's had a lot going on. Like Buffy revival's been announced, that's coming back. There's big news happening in the world of Ian. All right. Um,
Turned
but
42. I just, my brain's leaking out.
it's all going down, but all going downhill. But no. But yeah, so but I do like this. I like that Mark is literally saying to them like, "Look, guys, like, what do you think?" And that one of my questions actually I had written down was like, "What do you think of like this advice, Ian?" But yeah, but that was one of my questions, which you answered obviously about like the advice. Like, was that
But
good advice?
I'm curious what you think, because right for me, I'm like, but it was just like the future alt reality. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with mentioning it, but what do you think?
Maybe like he could have brought it up later on rather than on the actual time of him asking her out.
That's
But
okay. That's fair. Yeah.
yeah, but I get that, Mark is very much like, there's been too many secrets been kept between people. I want everything out in the open. I just want to be like fresh start. Nolan kept so many secrets from me, like, so I know he's drawn from experience, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I maybe would have like had a couple of dates first and then maybe mentioned it. Um, but I do love them hanging out anyway. And I love as well when like William's car won't start. He's like, "Hey, can you help us out?"
I
And like Mark,
really
like,
love that. Yeah.
yeah. He's like, "Do a loop." Um,
And I like
I
that
just
he's just kind of like doing it like,
yeah.
okay, like,
Like, okay, like I get it, whatever. This is not what my powers are for, but let's just go.
yeah.
Um, no, I love it. I love their friendship. So any scene together with like Mark and William and Rick as well, I just really like.
If you could
Um,
fly, Adam, you're damn right. Every time I went to New York, I'd be like, great, now fly us to Stonewall. And I'd like sit on your back while you flew there.
literally like Aladdin and Jasmine on the carpet. That would be me. Um, yeah, literally. And then like, oh, by the way, take me home. I'm not getting the train home.
Yeah, how could I
Um,
possibly? Ugh.
then obviously at the end of that, we see that Mark does go to the treehouse, and like Eve's like, "You're gonna be outside talking to yourself all day? Or
I
are you
love
gonna
that
come
she
in?"
clocks him. She's like, all right, you're being weird. You're just like sitting out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, like come in. What are you doing? We're friends.
Yeah.
Um, all right, and then we go back to the Grayson household. So it's Debbie and Oliver. She's covering up with makeup to cover up his purple skin, and giving him his secret identity. And obviously he apologized for hiding his powers. And I love like, already we're kind of going into this where like the dynamic is so different now with like Debbie and Mark and Oliver compared to everything with Nolan, which
Yeah.
was just so toxic. He was controlling how everybody found out everything. But I love like Debbie's kind of like, hey, like maybe that wasn't the best idea. Like, and I understand why you felt like you had to do that, but and it's all conversational. And that's
Yeah.
totally different from the way Nolan handled everything, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's not killing anyone. So, but yeah, no, I like that. It, because also like she would have had a right to be a little
Yeah.
mad, but she
Yeah.
like was so good about it and so kind, and that's why we love her.
Yeah, absolute icon. I love as well when like so obviously Cecil comes to the door, which Oliver runs to answer the door. He's still got like a little like patch of like purple
Mhm.
like on his face, and like Cecil introduces himself, and I love like Oliver says something like oh I heard you tell superheroes what to do, and if they don't do what you tell them, then you get mad, and he's like yeah it's pretty accurate. And like Oliver says like oh hey I'm nearly a superhero too, and I love when like Debbie walks up behind him and just has that face of thunder, and she's like no Cecil.
Yeah.
Fuck no. That's all her face says. I love that. The animation is so good in this for doing that, where you can see so much of what a character thinks and feels just on their face. And Debbie is like, fuck no, Cecil.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think I
Um,
said this last season, I still kind of wouldn't mind her and Cecil getting together.
agreed. Absolutely. Because they are from the same world, essentially, you know?
Right?
Like
Like, yeah, like even though he's like the head of government, whatever, but like they still like kind of get each other, I think.
massive and respect each other in a way. Like
Yeah.
Cecil has a lot of respect because, like, at the end of the day, Cecil has all of the manpower to go over Debbie
Right.
and just be like, "We're taking this, goodbye." But like, he still respects her enough to say, "Look, I get what you mean. I get they're your children.
Yeah.
I'm coming to talk to you. I'm not just coming to take them away because I want to reason with you about this." And he has a lot of respect for her, and he always
Yeah.
says, like, the reason why I had all the cameras in the house and everything was to protect you and Mark. Like, I was watching Nolan, I wasn't watching you.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, but I still love like even though Debbie like in this moment, and she's right to be like, look, back the fuck off. I think she still understands Cecil in a way that other characters
Yeah.
just don't.
No, I agree
Um,
because I think if she like really fucking hated him, there wouldn't be any like pleasantries, I don't think.
no, like he wouldn't be coming into the house and sitting down at the kitchen counter to talk. Like she'd be
Right.
like, look, no, door slam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, then we go to the tree house, and what happens here, Ian?
Mark really flubs it trying to ask her out.
He is awkward as fuck.
It
Um,
really, I'm like, they know each other so well at this point. I'm like, my dude, I love you, but why are you being so weird and bad about this?
So he just I mean, he's adorable. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's stumbling over his way. He's like, oh, but we could as people, not as hero, like you as and like just completely stumble over. And I love that she just like cut to the chase. Mark, are you asking me out? Like, is that what we're doing? Um, but I do like the conversation, like, when she's talking about, oh, like outside of this, like I've signed up to college, like part time. I want to go and do this and like get my education because this isn't my whole life. Like, it takes over other people's lives. And I just like that we're getting this more background information about like Eve, who's, yeah, I love that. She's like, outside of this, I want to do this. I want to pursue this on my terms because you know how
Yeah.
shitty her parents were with her about being a superhero.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I mean, also like, I think we both said this before. Like, I also understand Eve being like, "No one bother me. I'm gonna get this nice tree house where I don't have to talk to anyone."
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you know what? I'd be exactly the same. I'm gonna make this treehouse. I'm gone. I'm isolating myself until I figure this shit out.
Yeah, like
Because
I'll
as
talk to you when I feel like it.
exactly, because as you and I discussed it, obviously on the Eve episode, I mean, she went through a whole load of shit before she even got to this point of like in the
Right.
show. Like as a little girl, like getting her powers, like that shit was heavy. And like that photograph of like all of her, like, what she called her family, oh my God,
Yeah.
like hit so much hard at that point. But yeah, so if she wants to take time away in the treehouse, Eve, you go and take that time, girl. You've earned it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
she really has earned it.
Absolutely. Then we cut back to so Debbie and Caesar. It's kind of what we were saying before. They're talking about Oliver's powers. And I love that, like, Caesar's trying to reason with her, and she's like, look, I don't work for you, Caesar. My responsibility is my family first, and that's never going to change no matter what. And like Caesar's like, look, completely understand and I respect that. And I get that. And he does. Like he does respect that.
He
That's why
does,
he's
yeah.
here to talk to Debbie. But at the same time, he's like, however, we've got a massive threat. You saw the Viltrumites came down like last
Yeah.
time. We were not ready then. Mark was not ready then. So any help we can get, anyone that has like a slither of Viltrumite like blood in them is going to be an asset. So obviously, if we are going to do this, I totally respect you. We'll do it at your pace, but this kind of needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I understand where he's coming from. Like Caesar's job is trying to protect the world, and he's seen what nearly happened with Nolan. Like they had no preparations at all, like to take him down. So an army of Viltrumites, they'd be fucked.
And it's one of those things that I appreciate that like you can understand both. So, like
Yeah,
you understand why Debbie's being more protective because like this organization not explicitly, but like played into like fucking up her life.
Yeah.
But also you understand why Cecil is like, yeah, but it was like your husband fucked up the world, so like we need to like make sure we're just keeping track of people with powers like his.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I like that. So I like that there's no one that's like 100% wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, I feel like you and I are gonna more side with Debbie, but it's
Yeah.
like we understand, it's not like
Yeah.
Cecil's coming off as this like giant evil like dickhead or whatever.
Right, exactly. Like they're both standing their ground with their opinions, but at the same time, they're both not saying to the other person, fuck off, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
they're kind of like, yes, I see where you're coming from, but so
Here's
yeah,
yeah, here's my yeah.
yeah. And yeah, it's just the writing, like it works so, so well, and like all the characters feel so real for that.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, I really, really like it. Um, then we cut back to Dr. Seismic, who is generating holes in the ground now. And I love as well, like Rex was in the shower and he's like, whoa, what's going on? Like the water's gone out. Like, what the hell's going on? Walks out in just his towel, which is a joke that comes in later on, which is fantastic. And then, yeah, he's basically swallowed into the ground. Back at the GDA, obviously headquarters, like everyone is freaking the fuck out. Everyone's panicking because they're unable to contact any of the Guardians. As we see, there's been holes like popping up all over America, essentially pulling them into the ground. And everyone's like, "Can we get a hold of them? Can we contact anyone?" No, the only ones that we can contact, there's two of them that haven't been taken. And obviously, we find out who later on. Um, we kind of cut back briefly to the Grayson household again, where Debbie's like saying, "Look, Cecil, I don't want you training Oliver. He's too young." And she's absolutely right to say it. Like, he is still a child. Like, he's too young to go
Yeah.
through all of that. Like, even a tiny part of what Nolan and Mark went through, he's too young for that. And Mark's a teenager, and he's too young for that, let alone a child,
Right.
So and like she even says, like, I could never trust you with Mark or Oliver's lives, which is interesting. But then Cecil comes back with this line, which is kind of true. It's what we were saying earlier. He's like, well, look, other people have sons and daughters who are not like Mark and Oliver. And it's like
Yeah.
they don't have superpowers. So I'm trying to protect them as well. And, he's right to say it's the conversation what we already said. He's right to say it, and they're both right in different
Yeah, yeah.
ways.
Well, and I
And
feel like you and I like that's what we like in our like genre superhero storytelling, where it's like a little bit more nuanced, where it's not just like everything is super black and white.
Exactly, exactly. And that's funny because that's a contrast now with Mark, who is kind of in a way being very black and white, where he's
Yeah.
like, nope, you've done something, prison, compared to this, which is a lot more gray. Like, we've got
Yeah.
two opinions here which conflict, but are both right in their own way. Um, Obviously, then Cecil gets a call. He's like, oh, every single superhero in America has been abducted except for two. And obviously, we cut back to the treehouse where, like, so Eve agrees to go on the date. It all seems to be going really, really nice. And then he's like, oh, and Mark obviously flubs up and he says the thing which Rick and William said not to do, which he's like, oh, I didn't want to leave you hanging anymore. And she's like, wait, what? And then, explains kind of the futuristic Eve. And obviously, Eve's kind of rightfully pissed off here. And she's like, wait, the only reason why you asked me out is so you feel better about not leaving some futuristic version of me. Like, you feel guilty over that? Like, what? Like, do you not like me? So Eve is like, I understand why she's pissed off here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like because even though I'm of the like just like
Mm.
tell people, I still would be like, Marky didn't do a good job of telling her. Like I feel like he could have been like, it made meeting future you made me realize that like I should just ask you out and stop waiting. Like the fact that he was like leave you hanging, it's like, ooh, that was bad like language to use for that. Like if he had said it just made me realize that like I could ask you out or
Mm.
I've had these feelings but I didn't think you did, and she, something like that might have been more okay than like, well, you were waiting for me to say this, so
Right. I think as well, like probably like William and Rick to a degree, because like Rick kind of knows Mark pretty well now. Probably know that Mark isn't the best like wordsmith, so
yeah,
probably
also that,
knows like
yeah.
to drop something like that, which is pretty fucking important. Like Mark to try and deliver that in the best way ain't gonna happen. So that's
Yeah,
probably
also
why they were
true.
like, you know what I mean? So hey, like I know you probably want to talk about this, and I get why you do, but maybe just hold on that for a little bit because you barely can ask Eve out, let alone talk about this other thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I love as well like this line of when like obviously Mark's like gets a call of Cecil. He's like, this is the worst time ever, and like obviously explains like, oh my god, like something's going on, we need to go. And I love like when Eve's like, this better be fucking cataclysmic. Like she's just so annoyed. But
And then it was.
yeah, it absolutely was. Obviously, we cut back briefly. I do like this little scene when we go back to Oliver and Mark's room, and obviously he's kind of hearing this conversation downstairs with Cecil and Debbie. And like, he puts on Mark's OG costume, like back from season one, and I really like that. It's like little brother stepping into big brother's shoes, like, I'm going to go and help him. Obviously, he tries to escape, and then Debbie is there. And she's like, and where do you think you're going?
And even this she handles like with nothing but kindness. And
Absolutely.
also, I don't know if you thought this. I mean, clearly he's drawn the same way, but this is when I was like, oh, they do draw him to a little bit to look like young Mark. Like when
Yep.
he looked
Yeah.
at Debbie, I was like, oh, he looks like Mark. Oh, that's on purpose.
Hmm.
Duh.
Yeah, yeah. And that's like that's why I think Debbie has kind of lived this in a way where like Mark really wanted to hurry up and be a superhero so that he could be like his dad. So he's kind
Yeah.
Debbie's seen this again where it's like, oh, the younger version like is wanting to become the older version like that. And she's trying to say, look, don't go off and just try and become
Yeah.
this other person. One, you're too young, but two, we need to discover who you are first, and then really hone, like, focus on that. Like, not try to
Yeah.
become Invincible, become Oliver, you know. And obviously, that'll be a big thing which goes on moving forward in the show. But yeah, she does. You're right, Ian. She handles it so well. She's like, you know, she's like, okay, yes, I'm a little bit annoyed, but and just talks him down, and like it really, really works. And even he apologizes, which is really nice.
Yeah, I really like his reaction was really cute. Like,
Yeah,
I think I wrote down like she's like I think she says like you know who Invincible's mom is, and
yeah.
his like little kid of like I was like oh this is cute.
Yeah. And again, like she just for all that he is an alien, like I love that she knows how to talk to him in a human way
Yeah.
and get through the human side of him. And like because he's so intelligent as well, he's so switched on, he's like he just gets it straight away. But
Yeah.
Debbie
Yeah.
knows that, you know? And I just yeah, it just works so well. The dynamic, like, man, Debbie just nails it. She is an
Mm.
icon for a reason.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so then obviously we cut back to this is all when shit is going down. So Dr. Seismic, he's got all the heroes underground, trapped in these like bubbles, like these kind of eggs. So he's been spending all of his time in prison learning all about the different heroes and like how the best way would be to kind of keep them locked down like that. Robot is obviously inside of one of the eggs with Monster Girl trying to contact the GDA. He's like put all of his power into the system to try and do that, which we see later on how that pays off. Um, and then I love this as well when like we hear like the drilling noise and it's like, what is that? And then we see Eve has obviously made this drill and like blasts through the ground with Mark. And they're just like, well, what's going on? I love the line when Dr. Seismic's like, well, it's my old friends token diversity and gender stereotype. And they just look at each other like, what?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So funny. And obviously Doc Seismic like slaps his hands together and sends out like this, you know, ray. And then he's like, oh, well, is that it? And it's like, oh, that wasn't for you. This is for this. And then we see like these spider creatures. We see like, these giant centipedes. We see like these magma monsters, like everything. And then Mark and Eve are a bit like, oh, shit, let's do our thing. So obviously they start fighting them all. You know, and like they're kind of holding their ground, but they're not winning. They're kind of just batting them back, but like, you know, they're not really getting ahead of everything. And then we see like obviously Donald and Cecil are watching through Robot's eyes, like that kind of the transmitter is work. So they're kind of seeing like what is going on, and he's kind of like talking, saying, okay, this is what's happening, this is what's happening. And then Cecil says the line, open the dark room and ready drop pods 1 to 3. Should we see what comes in there? Um so obviously we get a little bit of a flashback as well. Obviously when, you know, Debbie's talking to Oliver again, saying that Oliver wanted to go and help and that, you know, he knew that the reason why he didn't want to say anything is because Debbie would say no. Obviously they apologize and hug, and it's what we said before. Like, Debbie even says, look, Mark will start training you, but there's going to be no more secrets between us. And I really
Yeah.
like that. Again, it's just, you know, she's doing the absolute best parenting 101 with him, and it's the absolute best way to handle that situation. Um, all right, yeah. So then going back to the big fight here. So now, just all of this, like this big fight. I love like how this fight like has so many layers of where like you think they're going to be like knocked down and taken over, and then this thing happens, and this thing happens. It's very Avengers. Like it reminded me of that at one point when all the heroes come in. Obviously, we'll get to it shortly, but yeah. So obviously we see, you know, they're fighting the creatures. Eve gets knocked down. She gets blasted down. Mark says he's going to try and cover her while she goes to try and save the others. She gets hit down. Seismic's like basically blasts Mark in the face as well. He puts his hand like on Mark's face and blasts. One of the creatures obviously punctures Mark as well, like with its fang and like poisons him. So he's a bit like, ugh. And then it looks like, you know, then he's trapped them both in a bubble, like Eve and Mark. He's like blasting the ceiling above them to try and crush them. And then just everything happens here where Darkwing, do you remember Darkwing, Ian? From last
Adam,
season?
I was like, I know we've seen this guy, but
Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, it wasn't a big moment. So like there was an episode last season when like Cecil sent like Mark into the city because there was like a big dome over a part of the city where it was just completely blacked out. Mark went in and it was just a really freaky like dark zone. And then like that was Darkwing's power essentially. Like he can pull people into that realm and it's just completely dark and eerie.
Mm,
So he was like, when later on when Mark says like, oh, he should be in jail, blah 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 blah, it's reference to that.
mm.
In that last season. And obviously the pods 1 to 3 was like those androids who look like, Rick, who was just like what Sinclair's machines essentially. They all come to help. And then Seismic calls everything here into the fight. So we get every single creature. But this is like a big Avengers fight, right? Like we've got
Yeah.
like the robots, we've got like Darkwing, and then like, all of the robots go and like rip open the eggs, and then all the heroes come out. And we've got like a massive like Avengers style like fight that's just happening here. But I actually really liked it. But I did fucking laugh my ass off when like Rex is fighting completely naked because he was just in a towel.
I love Rex. I so this is where I was like, ask Adam about these heroes. Because I was like, I know we haven't seen all of this many
No,
heroes
no,
before, but I
no.
was like, I bet they're from the comics. Where like
Yes,
most of
yeah.
them, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of them are. So it's like kind of like a wink and a nudge to like readers where, there are some heroes in there that come into the fight and you're like, who the fuck is that? We haven't seen them before. And there's quite a few of them. There's about 5 or 6, but yeah, they are referenced in like the comics. There's like other kind of people that work like in other parts of like the GDA and like help out Cecil in other ways. But yes, essentially. But all you need to know is Cecil sent in heroes to save the day, essentially. Um,
Oh, oh, and I forgot to mention this
oh
because this
yeah.
I wrote this line down before that happens. When Seismic's like, "Does anyone have any last words?" and you
Mm.
hear Rex yell, "Eat a dick."
Honestly, Rex and that voice actor as well is so good for Rex. Like he's absolutely perfect. So yeah,
Yeah, no,
he
I love it.
nails it every single time. Obviously, Mark spots Seismic in amongst all of this fight. He's going to go and get him, but then Darkwing basically pulls him into the Shadowverse. That's what it is, and like just pulls him back. And then once he does that, all of that kind of mind control that he has over the creatures just stops, and they're all like, "Yep, I think we're done." And they kind of just go back into the center of the earth, and the fight's done. And like again, like Rex's line, he's like, "We won. My dick's out, and I don't care." And it's just walking around like completely butt naked. It's genius. I love it. I love Rex so
Yeah.
much. But
Do you watch Big Mouth? I can't remember if we talked about this already.
no, is that
Is
actor
he
in it? Oh,
Yeah, like he's one of the funniest characters in Big Mouth. Yeah.
oh, nice. Is he like very like Rex coded or yeah?
Like he's
Okay.
like filthy. It's like because they're all like supposed to be like preteens. He's like super
Mhm.
horny, like preteens. So he's like always talking about like sex and jerking off and like just really ridiculous. And it works with that voice.
Oh, nice. Yeah, like that raspy type voice. It just yeah. It's like it is that like almost like dickhead voice, but it works
Yeah.
so well. Yeah, it's genius. So then this is obviously what we were saying before, where Mark like sees his former enemies and he's like pissed. He's like, "Whoa, Cecil, what is going on? Like, you know, Darkwing, like he should be locked up, and like all of these like robots that I had to fight before, like they should not be here. What the hell are you doing?" And like, Darkwing kind of explains, "Oh, look, well, I'm better now. Like I've been through rehabilitation. I'm trying to like make up for it." And Mark doesn't want to hear any of it. He's like,
Yeah.
"Nope, jail." And it does remind me, as I said, of that Buffy episode in Angel when she crosses over in season 1, which is like, no, no, jail. Like I don't care what you've done with Faith, jail.
Well, and I think it's the mortal that says that someone is even like, Mark, he did help us, like chill
Hmm.
out. Um, because I understood Mark's anger, but I also was like, maybe right now is not the time to like he did literally you all would have been dead if he did not show up.
Yep.
So like maybe we'll like table this for tomorrow or
Hmm.
something.
Exactly. Or even just say like, look, like, thank you for saving us. I've got a lot of questions, so I'm going to probably talk to Cecil. And I mean, I know he obviously does fly off to see him, but I mean, chill out a little bit, Mark. Like, you have
Right,
just been saved
yeah.
by these people, like literally. Like, as you said, Immortal says to him, like, they've just saved our lives. Calm down, Mark.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, Mark apologizes to Eve and he's like, look, I can't talk about this right now. I've got to go and talk to Cecil. And then Darkwing warns Cecil. He's like, oh, by the way, he's coming. Heads up. So then we go to Cecil's office and then Mark confronts him. And then this is what I like what Cecil says. So basically explains like again, look, they're reformed. Like they want to make up like retribution for their mistakes. Like we should be allowed to let them do that, Mark. Like they've got abilities that we could use for good.
Yeah.
And then, Mark's like, no, no, like they killed people. They should be in jail. And then Cecil is absolutely right when he says, you killed Angstrom, Levy. Like, should I lock you up too? Like, and like Mark doesn't get, he's like, no, 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 that was different. That blah, 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 blah. Cecil's absolutely right. Like
He
for me,
is.
he's completely right.
Yeah, I mean, it's again where it's like I do understand Mark's anger, but
Yeah.
also Cecil's right.
Hmm.
And I like I was a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie, Adam. I was a little nervous. I was like, "Ooh, he's sounding too much like Nolan. Is he going to like accidentally kill Cecil out of anger?"
Hmm.
But I did like that. Then he's like, "Wait, why are we in the White Room?" And he's like,
Yeah.
"To defend me against you." And like all the creatures come out
Hmm.
because while like there's an argument to be made for, oh, but look, he's like building all this shit to like fight these people, but like in that moment, I was worried that he needed protection. So
Hmm.
because
And
Mark was
like,
kind of like going too hard about it.
yep, yep. And honestly, like if that conversation had continued, like I love as well, like Caesar like guides him into the White Room while they're talking because he's like, "This is getting heated. I'm going to
Yeah.
defend myself."
He's fucking smart about it. Yeah.
Exactly. Like Caesar's always two steps ahead of everything, and that's what I really like about him. It's like straight away, like yes, he's built these like machines to obviously help like with the fight, on Earth, but he's also built them for his own protection in case Mark ever turns out to be like Nolan, right? He's always got to
Because
have a
like we
backup
went
plan.
through it, right? Like we
Literally.
know Mark, so we like love him, but like I also would understand why Cecil would be like, yeah, you're good now, but like your dad was also good for a long time until he murdered everybody.
Exactly. And in season two, we saw like in an ultimate like multiverse when when Mark sides with Nolan, exactly what Mark can be like when he was like going
Yeah.
along the line, like just decapitating people and like killing like, I think it was Angstrom's like wife and like child and dog. Like, we can see what Mark can be like his like capabilities.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then we kind of get the end, but it's not the end because who do we see in prison, Ian?
My alien boyfriend, Alan.
I fucking love Alan.
It was
I
like it
love
was so nice to see him. I was like, oh, when I heard the voice, I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
And Seth Rogen is perfect for him,
he
right? His
really is
voice.
so good. I don't know that
Yeah.
like if I'd read the comics, I would have ever been like, Seth Rogen would be great for this voice, but
Right.
like he is great for it.
It just makes him so lovable, right?
Yeah.
Like, and just like, it's like almost like a goofball alien, but like, but I just love him for that. He just does it so well. Like, straight away, this scene where he's complaining about the food in prison, like, it's just, it's like so Alan coded. And like that episode in season two was so good when it was like just about Alan and his girlfriend, like when he got like basically ripped
And
apart
I
by the
fucking
Viltrumites.
wept. Yes.
So heavy stuff, but I loved it so much. And obviously, he is working with that Viltrumite that revealed himself to Alan at the end of like season two, and he's like really helped to buff him up. And like even Nolan says, like, I've noticed that you are like a lot stronger now. Like, why haven't you just left here? And he's like, well, and I love as well when Alan's like, oh, it would take a pretty big laser to take me out, and it just zooms out, and he's like in the chair, like getting the laser
There's a
blasted at
big
him.
laser. Yeah.
Yeah, like a massive laser. He's like, oh. Um, Obviously, they blast the laser on Alan, they test it out. And I do like this when, like, the whole time when he's talking to Nolan, obviously they're talking like through each other's minds. And like, he's like, oh, so like you do care about me, you have feelings about me. And he's like, no, I don't care about you. You can go at any point, like whatever. And like obviously when he has the laser tested on him and like he comes back and Nolan's like, oh, you're back. And like, he points out and he's like, oh, so you do care if I live or die then? And he's like, you're getting closer to the cause, which is obviously Alan's working with that Viltrumite for like the coalition. They're all coming together to try and stop the Viltrumites. And like Nolan just completely ignores him. And
Yeah.
like,
I wrote down the lines. He says, oh, you're ignoring me. Very mature. Also, not how new best friends should treat each other.
yes, I love that line, like new best friend. Like it's genius. Because it's like the Nolan that we know, Alan would fucking annoy the shit out of him. But yet I think he sees beyond that and he's like, oh, there's more to this that's going on. Like, Alan wants to really do something to help me fight the Viltrumites. So, yeah. And this is a friendship that's going to really pay off. Like, them two together shouldn't work, but yeah, it's great. I'm looking forward to seeing like more scenes with them two together.
Yeah.
And then
I love Alan. Give me more Alan,
yeah, honestly, make him a main character. Yeah, give me another episode just about Alan. Like, I
but
love
don't
that
kill
man.
him this time.
Yeah. Unless you bring him back even stronger. But
Yeah.
yeah, but then we get the end. So what were your overall thoughts at the end of this episode, Ian?
I really enjoyed it. I'm not gonna lie, the like I know that you really liked it. The battle for me, it got a little like just
Hmm.
only because we had just learned that Mark was like the strongest person ever, and I just didn't quite buy that those monsters would be any sort like that he wouldn't just be able to be like boop and like flick them across the room.
Hmm.
So like just that was the only part that like a little bit lost me. Um,
Yeah.
and I this isn't like negative or positive, but I know that you also were a nerd growing up. You remember like the like very 90s crossovers Marvel would do, where it's like
Mm,
kind of like Infinity War or like
yeah.
Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity Crusade, where it's like all the heroes are there, but like if this were a different story, it's like, well, that wouldn't happen to, Storm would have gotten herself out of this, or Wolverine or
Right.
Captain America, but like, oh, cool. Like, that's what I kept
Mm,
thinking of. But yes, I did like
yeah.
the episode. I did not answer your question. I realized I liked the episode. I'm excited to watch more. It was actually like, I was like, oh, right. I can't automatically go in the next one because I wanted to like, we're recording for this one and I didn't want to like get
Mm,
mixed up. But
yeah,
like,
no,
I
fair.
definitely am looking forward to like watching the rest.
I think it was for me, it was like, I understand what you're saying with that critique, like 100%. Obviously, I know they kind of like tried to write it in with saying like Dr. Seismic had been like spending his whole time in prison, like studying them all. So he knew like a way of like to capture all superheroes that could like affect them all, not just one. But I get what you're saying. Like we've just seen a big like, training montage where Mark is the strongest he's ever been. And yet Dr. Seismic still manages to take him down. But I understand what you're saying. But I think I really liked it just because like that big battle scene, it was very Avengers like. But so we've seen fights like that before, where like the Guardians of the Globe have like had their asses handed to them. Like when they've just been absolutely like
Like,
beaten
no one
back.
died. So this is like an achievement.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly. So like everyone survived. Like they managed to fight it all off. They did really well together. And it was like a cool for that moment anyway, at least. But I do take on board what you were saying. But the overall episode, like I really loved. Like I love that, like, right, time's moved on. Like, like we've
Yeah.
we've gone through and we've processed all of that, emotion from the last like season. And we're getting back to like it's nice to see Mark so strong. Like, because we've seen Mark getting beaten and slapped around so many times. It's nice to see him this powerful again.
This felt like
Um,
maybe the first episode where he didn't get his ass
yeah.
beat. Like,
Right, exactly. And like, yeah, it's just I love it. I love like we're moving forward. Like, yes, a lot is happening. It feels really compact, but yet like we're developing all about like relationships as well, where like Oliver's growing up and like we're seeing
yeah,
like what's going on there, and like Mark and Eve are now going to be a thing, but obviously there's still a little bit of like tension there, but they're going to figure it out, and like all of this, and then we get Nolan and Alan, which is still like the thing that's hanging over the top, and then the
yeah,
Viltrumites. The threat is still coming. It could happen at any point because, as we learned, like the general is going to come down at some point, and like Anessa did say to Mark, get the planet ready, otherwise we'll kill you and just take it anyway. So all of this is like still building up to that pending dread. But yeah, I just loved it. I just love being back in this show, Ian. I love being back in this world, and like it feels great to be back. And obviously, first 3 episodes dropping is like gold. So yeah, I'm
yeah.
excited to cover it more with you. But
No, I agree with you. Like, this is one of those shows where it's like enjoyable to just be back in the world. Like, it's
yeah.
enjoyable to just like check in with like these characters we love, and even the characters that like more peripheral that we don't care about, checking in to see where they are and like stuff like that. I do like
Mhm.
this show has, for me and for you, I guess too, like they've built the world enough where they earned that for me as a
Yeah.
viewer, where it's like I just enjoy being in the world.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And just the characters as well and everything, just to be back in like with those characters again is always a joy. It always is.
And I think it's also a credit to the show that like you and I, it's like I can enjoy just like, I don't know, I kind of want a Rex episode. I hope they give us
Yeah.
like just like him doing kind of like the Alan episode, but with Rex.
hmm
And like that's a credit to the show that like we care enough about other characters that it's like, yeah,
hmm
I could do an episode with just that character because I love them.
Right, exactly. And those episodes have always been so good. I mean, like the Eve episode was really good. And then like the Rex episode, sorry, that I wish the Alan episode was like
I was
super
like, did
good
I
as well.
forget there was one? Jesus.
Gotta go back and watch it. You just sit and like write it tonight and like edit it. But honestly though, like yeah, like the solo episodes have been super good, and I hope like a lot going forward. Like 'cause obviously they're going to do more seasons. I hope we do get like at least one episode a season where we get like one character focused
Right.
episode
Yeah.
outside of like Mark and like what he's got going on, because the season is very much Mark like focused, and obviously
Right.
Nolan. But yeah, no, I just yeah, I'm excited. It's got me pumped. It's got me excited for more Invincible. And as we said, I just love being back in this world. But yeah, if you had to give this episode a rating out of 10, Ian, where would you sit?
Um, I think like 7.5.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I went
Maybe
higher.
an
I'm
eight,
at a,
maybe eight.
yeah.
I don't know. What would you do it? Yeah.
Oh, I'm at a 9.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it did like so much of what I love in Invincible. So like yeah, like I'm at 9. Like it's not like, it's not for me like the best episode, but as terms of like an opener, it's just got me like excited for more, and I can't wait to jump into episode 2,
That's
which
great, yeah.
we will be doing. Ian and I will be back to cover episode 2 Invincible very soon. But before I do that, I just want to say, Ian, thank you so much for jumping on doing episode 1 and coming on doing more Invincible with me. This is super fun.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it. I'm pleased that we can geek out about it because we both love this show a lot.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you inviting me and wanting me to do this. I always have fun recording with you, Adam.
Absolutely. All right, Ian, tell everybody where they can find you and your incredible podcasts.
You can find me at Ian Carlos on all social media platforms. My podcast Slayerfest 98 is at SlayerFestX98 on all social media platforms. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, because we do video recordings like this for all of them now. And My Bloody Judy, which I co-host with Zachary Patton Garcia, is at My Bloody Judy on all platforms, and we're also on Spotify and YouTube. Subscribe, give us a good review, do all the nice things.
There you go, guys. Make sure you go and check him out as well. Yes, great content going on right there. Obviously, as I said earlier, Buffy's had a very big revival. Ian's recently just talked all about his thoughts on that, which is incredible. So if you're all big Buffy fans, which, hello, you should be, go and check out that, because it's really, really good, a really, really good episode. And obviously, check out My Bloody Judy as well. You might have seen me on an episode about Evil Dead. You never know. Go and check it out for that reason. But yeah, solid stuff. But yes, if you do want to follow the podcasts on social media, we've got Last Week On. Basically, just type that in, Last Week On Pod, I believe it is, on like X and on Instagram and everything like that. Come and give us a follow. If you want to follow me, I am at Straughan87 on everything, as well as Blue Sky as well. Just type in my name, you'll find me on there. And give us a rating. Give us a 5-star rating, otherwise don't bother. I'm joking. But yeah, leave us some comments.
But really, don't bother unless it's 5-star.
Like, literally.
I can say, yeah.
I'm like, whatever, but do it. But yeah, and as well, if you want to leave comments on Spotify, you can do that as well, which is really cool now. So yeah, we'll check out some of that as well. But yes, thank you again for doing this, Ian. This was incredible, and I'm excited to jump into episode 2, as I'll see you very shortly for that.
Bye.
All right, take care.